3 daughters, and he called the name of the first daughter Jemimah, and the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Keren-Happuch. And in all the land there were no women so beautiful as Job's daughters. And their father gave them an inheritance among their brothers. And after this, Job lived 140 years, and saw his sons and his sons' sons 4 generations. And Job died, an old man and full of days. This one paragraph is simply saturated with messianic timing language. We see all 8 days, or 8,000 years, numerically presented in order. 6,000 camels for the 6,000 years, or 6 days, 1,000 yoke of oxen for the 7th day, and 1,000 donkeys for the 8th day. We also see a reference to the 3rd and 7th day with the 3 daughters and 7 sons. The daughters are specifically called beautiful and given an inheritance. This reminds us of being the beautiful bride of the Lamb and receiving our glorified bodies at the resurrection as our coming inheritance. The name of the 3rd daughter literally means beautiful in Hebrew, and perhaps connects back to the 3rd day when we meet the Messiah as our bridegroom. We see that Job lived a life full of days, which is represented by his death at 140 years. We see that when 140 is multiplied by the 50 years of a Jubilee unit, using the prophetic Jubilee principle, we similarly arrive to the full days of man, or all 8 days. 140 times 50 equals biblical year 7,000. The mention of Job seeing his sons and his sons' sons at 4 generations may point to us seeing the Son of God, our Messiah, on day 4. Lastly, there's the cryptic mention of 14,000. The obvious connection might be that 14,000 is simply 7,000 multiplied by 2, because of the double blessing mentioned in Job chapter 42, verse 10. This could be suggesting that both of the 2 resurrections as a double blessing will have occurred by biblical year 7,000. The connection of the completion of the 2 resurrections on biblical year 7,000 may also be foreshadowed by the 50 connected to Pentecost and the 50 connected to the Jubilee. In the 7,000-year plan of man, we see that the 7th-day Sabbath prophetically represents the 1,000-year reign of the Messiah. The second resurrection occurs after the 7th day, after the rest. The second resurrection occurs on the 8th day. The Jubilee count shares a similar pattern. The Jubilee year is calculated by a week of 7 years multiplied by a week of 7 years, for a total of 49 years. The next year is the Jubilee year, the 50th year. Because the 7th year in each week of 7 years is a rest for the land, that means the year preceding the Jubilee is also a land rest. Thus, the year following the 7th year land rest is not only a 50, but also serves as a prophetic type of day 8 in following the 7th year rest. The last Jubilee leading us into eternity is Jubilee 140. Likewise, day 8 is the last day in the plan of man, representing eternity. The Jubilee year is also a land rest, thus producing 2 rests in a row. Likewise, though the 1,000-year reign is the 7th-day rest we look forward to, our eternal rest extends into eternity, also creating 2 days of rest in a row. The Pentecost count shares a similar pattern. Pentecost is calculated by a week of 7 days multiplied by another week of 7 days, for a total of 49 days following the Sabbath during unleavened bread. The next day is the day of Pentecost, the 50th day. Because the 7th day in each week of 7 days is a Sabbath rest for God's people, that means the day preceding Pentecost is a Sabbath rest. Thus, the day following the 7th-day Sabbath rest is not only a 50, but also serves as a type of day 8 in following the 7th-day Sabbath rest. Pentecost is also a rest day, thus also producing 2 rests in a row. As already mentioned, though the 1,000-year reign is the 7th-day rest we look forward to, our eternal rest also extends into eternity, also creating 2 days of rest in a row. Lastly, given that this pattern suggests the last of the 2 resurrections occurring at the start of the 8th day, it is seemingly appropriate that on the day of Pentecost, 2 loaves of risen bread is to be offered up to God. Shavuot will be the final resurrection, and thus the completion of the 2 resurrections. The Throne of Solomon Prophecy. The Queen of Sheba, impressed with Solomon's wisdom, gifted Solomon 100